Thank you, Isaac. Welcome, graduates, family and friends, faculty and staff, and honored guests. I am honored and humbled to be chosen as your faculty commencement speaker. To prepare for this speech, I thought over and over about what I would say. Being a very diligent and conscientious person, I changed my YouTube channel from cat videos to commencement speeches. I viewed lots of speeches. There were speeches given by comedians, so I thought maybe I should include jokes in my speech. And then I remembered teaching a trigonometry class where I kept going off on tangents. Yeah, the students groaned at my attempt at humor, and I knew that it was a sign, as opposed to a cosign, to keep my teaching job and not become a stand-up comedian. There are commencement speakers who sang. I used to teach middle school, and I found out that singing is a very effective classroom management tool. If students weren't doing their classwork, I would threaten them with my singing. They were very productive that year. But commencement is a happy time, not a time to torture, so singing is out. Watching lots of commencement speeches meant that I heard a lot of advice and words of wisdom. So I thought about advice I could pass on to you. Then I remembered trying to give my daughter advice about sex. She looked at me and said, "Mom, the school has been teaching this to us since kindergarten." By the time I'd summoned my courage, I guess I was 12 years too late. So I thought about the advice I'd been given the most, and it is to just be myself. What does it mean to be myself? Who am I? There are so many ways I could describe myself. Mother, wife, daughter, sister, female, mathematician, faculty member, child of immigrants, first in family to attend college, community college student, Chinese American. For each description I gave myself, there are mental images that pop up. There are stereotypes and societal expectations for each of the roles I mentioned. Sometimes I fit the stereotypes, and sometimes I don't. What are the stereotypes for me as a Chinese American female? Quiet, obedient, doesn't make waves, cute and small, exotic, a worker bee, not a leader, model minority, invisible. I'm sure my mother would have loved it and been spared gray hair if I had been more obedient, especially during my teenage years when I wouldn't think twice about tossing wet wads of toilet paper up to the ceiling of the bathroom. To the custodians out there, I'm sorry. One day, I got kicked out of class in high school for talking too much and mouthing off. The teacher told me that day that I completely ruined her image of Asian American females, as if I represent all Asian American females. Growing up, I struggled with these expectations society had for me. I had dialogues like this. Where are you from? San Francisco. No, really, where are you from? Really, I'm from San Francisco. No, I mean, where's your family from? Oh, okay. My family's from China. I knew it. I just knew it. I love Panda Express. And by the way, your English is pretty good for an Asian. I have no doubt that each of you have experienced societal expectations and stereotypes based on a label. The advice I got to just be myself is challenging when the me doesn't fit what society expects. Some of these stereotypes sound like good, positive ones: diligent, hardworking, obedient. And yet these same stereotypes can lead to our invisibility and being seen as worker bees, not leaders. According to the Harvard Business Review, Asian Americans are the least likely group in the U.S. to be promoted to management. How do I deal with these stereotypes? Do I conform to what is expected? Should I be the quiet, submissive, invisible person who doesn't rock the boat? Should I just be the worker bee and not have a voice at the table and not have a role in making change? If I do this, will I lose my identity and lose the real me for the sake of conforming to what society expects? Do I forsake my wants and dreams to meet society's expectations? One stereotype of Chinese Americans is that they play musical instruments, and in particular, either the piano or the violin. My mother had me learn to play the violin at the age of 9. The violin and I did not agree. I'm sure the neighbors wanted to call the SPCA because they thought that a cat was being tortured at my house. Another stereotype is to be studious. I didn't want to stay home and study. I wanted to go out and watch movies with my friends and go to school dances. My parents sent me to Chinese language school, but I didn't want to go. I wanted to play on the basketball team instead. I hated some of the stereotypes there were for me, because if I conformed to them, I was not cool or part of normal society. I didn't like them to the point that I wanted to reject my culture and heritage. I didn't want to be seen as that nerdy Asian kid who didn't have a social life. In the process, though, I was losing part of my heritage, my language, and my traditions. I was ashamed to be Chinese American and hating who I was. It took me a long time to embrace my identity and find value in it. I could not laugh at the stories I just told you. Instead, I was in a self-loathing mood. I didn't embrace my identity until I was well into college, when I had the opportunity to learn more about what it meant to be Chinese American, to learn how Chinese Americans helped shape this nation, to learn we were known as marginal members of the human race, and to learn that we were the only group to be excluded from immigrating to the United States. As a result, I started to question, who makes these stereotypes? Who defines what it is to be an American? Who defines the societal norms? Let me tell you a story that happened not too long ago. At least I don't think it's not too long ago. Some of you may not have been born yet, but here goes. The year was 1998. The setting, the Winter Olympics held in Nagano, Japan. The event was women's figure skating. That year, Tara Lipinski took the gold medal and Michelle Kwan took the silver. MSNBC, an American television network, came out with a headline that was splashed all over television: American beats out Kwan. The only problem was that Michelle Kwan is also American as Tara Lipinski. She was born in California, yet the headline suggested Kwan was not American. The headline perpetuated the stereotype that Asian groups are foreigners. I have heard from some of you in the audience today that you too have had similar struggles with norms and expectations based on stereotypes. So how do we change the narrative on stereotypes? Is there a step-to-step guide on how to do this? No, there isn't. What I have seen at Foothill, though, is a start to changing the narrative. I have heard you share your stories, and equally as important, I have seen you listen to the stories that others share. I have seen you try to understand and respect cultural differences. You have demanded that groups not be portrayed as monoliths in media and literature. I have seen this when you organized a vigil for the New Zealand shooting, sharing what it was like to be a Muslim. I have seen you listen to the treatment of Japanese Americans during World War II in the internment camps here in the United States. I have seen you listen to the harrowing stories of Vietnamese Americans' immigration experiences during the Vietnam War. I have read your essays on what you learned by listening to DACA students and those who have been frightened by potential ICE raids. This is only a start. We still have a lot of work ahead of us, but I challenge each of you to think about these stereotypes, even if they sound like good ones. Just like I tell my students, the grade you get from my class, that grade alone does not define who you are. Similarly, these stereotypes alone do not define who you are. Each of you has a unique story. Each person should be able to embrace their own identity. I think the fire extinguisher says something too. I implore you to allow space for people to tell their stories and to listen to these stories if someone is willing to share. Listening is a powerful tool that leads to empathy, compassion, and connections in society. I am hopeful that we will get to the point where no one has to feel ashamed of their heritage or the color of their skin in this country. And on this note, I thank you for listening today. Thank you very much. Congratulations, graduates.